We've got something special this week. We wanted to do something for the new movie, and what better than a Thor hammer. But this isn't just any Thor hammer, this is a Thor hammer toolbox, which I picked up from Amazon. And I love the idea of this toolbox. It really caught my eye because it's like a plastic blow molded case which unclips on the sides, folds out, and then the handle of the Thor hammer is actually a claw hammer, which is pretty quirky. And then there's this weird little bottle opener in there, which is actually my favourite piece, to be honest. That's probably something we could include. But essentially in this video we're going to be taking this concept of the hammer being the handle of the Thor hammer, and we're going to be improving it and making it better. The first piece of the puzzle we already have, which is these two boxes here, and we had to go around about 10 antique shops. They were marked up as a tenner each, and we got them for £7.50 each. And you'll see inside they're both the same. They're really solid wood, and they've got like this little felt tray in there for jewellery, and it's got some silver hardware, really nice silver hinges that are cut in. And these two together make not too far off what I would consider the size of a slightly scaled up Thor hammer. So in this video we're going to be trying to change these two random jewellery boxes into a Thor hammer concept. We're going to need to rip the guts out of these two boxes, and then obviously we'll put foam in there and we'll put some tools in there. And I think we're going to take the compact toolkit we did, use most of those tools, and then probably change a few out, improve that set. And then the one item the toolkit missed was a proper hammer. So we'll be able to include a hammer very similar to this. We'll probably go for a better hammer though. This one is a bit cheap and cheerful as well. And we'll leather wrap the handle, we'll mount that somehow in the middle, and then we'll make it to scale as a Thor hammer. We won't be going for all of the detail, but we will be making it look really rugged and awesome. So I think first thing is let's go and find a hammer. Right, we're back with a hammer, and a normal hammer wouldn't do. We had to go with a sledge, a sister sledge, as I call them. This is the smallest sledge they had in B&Q, 3 kg, and obviously we're going to cut it off. I'm not sure where we'll be cutting it yet, because we need to kind of get it to scale with the box. So that is a really important piece of the puzzle, and it'll help me explain what we're going to try and do. So we're going to be putting these two cases back to back, and here's one I made earlier. I've made a little template of roughly what we're going to be putting in the middle. Basically, a piece of timber like this that just sits in the middle. We'll secure the two cases together, which should give us a nice, roughly Thor-sized hammer head. And then we'll have a slot cut in there to house the head of the hammer, just like that. So we should end up with something roughly around that size, and then we'll cut off the handle. So what we've got to do now is I've worked out that if we use two pieces of 18mm MDF and then a 22mm piece of chipboard, which I've already got in scrap, we can make a 58mm spacer plate. Next thing we're going to do now is cut the timber up and replace this piece of foam with a piece of timber and secure these boxes in. Right, onto that. Right, so we've cut the three pieces of wood that are going in between these two cases. We've got two 18mm pieces of MDF and then a 22mm piece of chipboard. So the next thing we need to do is glue these three pieces together, and what we'll do is we'll glue them, we'll pin nail them, then once they're dry we'll sand them and get them into the perfect spot. So we've got a piece of strip wood on the bottom, we've got this kind of like centre section we've just built and glued, and then a top rail, and it sits perfectly flush there. That's exactly what we wanted. We'll be basically putting a piece of strip wood just up to the edge and then leaving the gap there to house the sister sledge. We've got 2 cans of silver spray, like a matte silver. That'll be to spray the hammerhead. And then we've got some matte black, which will be for like the dry brushing. So I think we're good for paint. The biggest quandary was how the heck do we mount this thing in here? There was a few different options really, but everything was going to be a little bit ugly and it would all stand quite proud. It's bad enough having these latches holding the door shut, let alone some big old bolts there. So what we've ended up going for is these security door bolts. I don't know if you've ever seen these. You can use them for doors in your house if you don't want a proper key. You just have this little star key. It's like a generic star key. You put it in there and you can just twist this little deadbolt into place. So what we're thinking of doing is mounting these 2 deadbolts, and then we'll put a little keyhole above so we can twist the deadbolt into place. We need to get this plywood wrap around here fixed, secure and looking tidy, and the exact same size as the box is. Let's do this plywood skin. Right, so we've got half of the box done and I'm pretty happy with that. The skin needed a little bit of fine fitting with the sander. It was pretty close, but we obviously want it to be flush. What we're going to end up doing is, rather than putting these little bolts that go into the side of the hammer, we're going to just drop the hammer down a little bit and we're going to put them above. We're going to cut this a little bit lower so the hammer sits a bit lower, and then we can put those 2 bolts above. So let's crack on. Look at that! I'm genuinely over the moon with that. It's not bad, it's flipping good. That is flipping, that's the business. Right, let's drop the hammer in it. You ready? That is a flipping beast, mate. That is a beast. That is genuine joy.
You've just captured genuine joy on camera.
I did not think that was going to work. So if we can just get a coat of paint on this before we leave, then it'll be dry in the morning. While that's drying, we're going to cut this sledgehammer to length. We're going to be making the handle 66 centimeters, which is the perfect scale length to go with the size of the hammer. So we've marked it up, we're going to cut it there, and then what we've bought is bicycle handle wrap. So if you've got like a classic bicycle with some racing grips and you wanted some brown wraps for the handles, this is what these are. They're on Amazon. We'll put a link below, and essentially we're going to stretch wrap this around the handle, which will give it the brown leather handle effect, which will then match the silver head. So let's firstly cut this to length, and then we will get on with the wrapping. And now the only problem is that, so I think we need a little bit of silver there. Should we give it another coat? That is looking really good, really solid as well. I can't believe how heavy the head of that hammer is. And I'm pretty happy with the sledge as well, with the wrap on it. So I think that wraps it up for today. We'll come back tomorrow when that's dry, give it a coat of lacquer, and then we'll get the hardware back on it, and we'll get to cutting some foam. We'll see you in the morning. Right, so it's all dry and I'm really pleased with it. We've got a really nice kind of like rugged, rough and ready effect. Basically we just sprayed the whole thing silver and then we give it a kind of like a dust coat with the black. It's come out as a nice kind of battered rustic effect hammerhead, which is exactly what we wanted. The timber in the middle is a lot better than it would have been with the layers. It's a bit rough and ready, but what Warhammer isn't rough and ready? So what we've got to do now is the last few bits for the build are we've got to put all the hardware back on. So we've got to put the catches on and the two little keyhole kind of covers, and then we need to attach the hardware and then we can look at some foam. Let's get going. So by this point in the video, you might be wondering, how heavy is this? Because it is flipping heavy. And if you are, you're on the same wavelength as me. So we've brought it over here to the scale. There's no tools in it yet. Well, that weighs more than I expected. And as a bit of a clue, it's a £7 sledgehammer, and we'll tell you how much the finished weight is and the weight without the tools at the end of the video. But drop us a comment, what's your guess? How much do you think it weighs? And while you're down there, what do you think of this build? Let us know. Do you think you might have a crack at building a Thor-inspired sledgehammer? But until then, let's get back to the build. Now we're going to move on to the foam. So I've had Mike cut me some foam. This is the 30mm, which is just going to slot straight in base. We've got 2 of each because obviously it's double-sided, this hammer. So we're going to have red face up in the base. That's where all the tools are going to go. And then we've got a thinner 10mm layer that goes in the lid. And that'll allow us to cut a logo through, a Thor logo, and that should look quite good. So the first thing to do is get the layout sorted. Right, so we've got a rough layout. We've lost the big old 12-inch spanner because that was put in there for the hammer element, and we've got a big old sledgy now. And we've also lost a couple of other little bits and bobs, a couple of the spanners. We're not going to fit the entire kit in here, but we'll fit most of it. So let's start cutting. Right, so I've got all the tools in, and we've got loads in there. We've really squeezed a fair amount of tools. So before we put those in the case though, we are going to cut our logos in. So on one lid, we're going to do the Thor logo. My hands are getting pretty Thor after all this. But we're going to cut the Thor logo in there, and then we're going to do a shadow foam logo in the other side. Here we go, let's cut that logo in. Right, so that's both the logos cut in. The Thor one's come out really, really great. I'm happy with that. It's a nice big logo, really clear what it says. The shadow foam one, I've cut that a few times. This is probably the smallest I've ever cut it, and there is really tiny little gaps between the letters. That was a bit tricky, but it's quite a simple technique. We just printed off the logo, laid it over the top of the foam, cut round each letter, and then peel back the foam. And it's quite an effective way to add some detail. So that's great. So we can put it in the case now and get the final look of the finished article. I think this looks better than I could have even hoped. It just really does pop nice. The red and how solid it all is. So yeah, I'm absolutely made up with this build. Some of the highlights, I love the mechanism. I mean, that wasn't going to plan, and I wanted a flush finish. I didn't want some big old, you know, kind of backdoor garden gate latch, which would look really scruffy. So I'm really happy with this. I also like the fact that it's got these kind of secret star keys, because it's kind of a way of saying you're not worthy because you don't have the keys. So it's kind of on brand for Thor, isn't it? I love the foam. I think having the red face up, it's not something we do a great deal of, having the red face up, but it's really effective. And we filled the space. We've got a really good layout going here. We've ended up with the end nippers, we've got the spanners, we've got a 1/4 inch socket set, a tape measure, the Leatherman scissors, a pen, a knife, a level, we've got a utility key, and then we've got the Thor logo in there. And the great thing about this piece of foam here, it squishes down on some of the tools that are proud just to hold them all in place. So it's kind of dual purpose, that foam, and it looks really good. On the other side, on the other side, we've got the same thing again, a piece of foam that's going to hold everything in, the shadow foam logo. We've got a full micro screwdriver set, which is also just, it's a great little bit of kit, this. We've got the Volt stick, we've got a full set of Weir screwdrivers effectively with the handle and then all the screwdrivers. This is a hell of an upgrade from the little Thor hammer. Right, so the final weigh in with all the tools in. So for all you who had a guess in the comments, it was 9 kilo without any tools in it, which was still a heavy old object. But now with everything in it, it's just up to 12.5 kilo. So you definitely wouldn't want to get hit with that. It's a bit of a monster. And that wraps it up for the Thor build. Hope you liked it. If you've not subscribed to the channel already, why haven't you? Surely this is proof enough of the crazy builds that we've got coming up on the channel. This is probably the most complex build we've ever done. And when I've looked at the video ideas list, there's a lot more complicated builds coming. So definitely subscribe to the channel if you've not already. Click the bell icon so you don't miss any future videos, and we'll see you in the next one.
Now, before we go back to Jono cutting the shadow foam, remember to subscribe.
Thanks very much, Colin. We've got loads of new exciting videos coming all the time. You're not going to want to miss them, so stay tuned.